Hi there, it's Sharon, and welcome to my studio. I'm thrilled to be joining a bunch of other artists today for a Fodder School 3 video hop. So, this is my third year doing Fodder School or signing up for Fodder School, and I've completed about half of the projects for the past year. The one thing I do love about Fodder School is when I have time, I can go back and revisit some of the other projects. And I know I've shared some of these on my social media and Instagram before and gotten a lot of questions about Fodder School. Basically, I use it as a gift to myself. You get a lesson every month at the beginning of the month showing you how to create some kind of collage fodder. And then in the middle of the month, you'll get another lesson or a series of lessons, sometimes multiple, on different ways to use that collage fodder. So these are the projects that I have created for Fodder School 3. I'm going to clear the table and just go through the months that I've completed with you one by one so you can have a little peek at the different kinds of projects that you'll make. So, the first project that I completed was the October lesson. That was the first lesson in Fodder School 3 from Deveney. This project was a Coptic bound sketchbook. You can see the binding here. And I really like this because I haven't really made any kind of book where I've actually stitched before, and I'm a little afraid of like stitching, and fiber arts is really not my forte. But she made it so easy to make this book. And for Fodder School 3, I decided that I would try to use only supplies that I had because I do have a ton of supplies in my studio. So I tried to repurpose some things that I had. I had this sticky back canvas paper, which was perfect to make the cover. And I just painted some different abstract things, made some marks, and used a Posca pen to go ahead and just put some details on it. Same thing on the back. For the inside of the book, she taught us how to do these end papers for our books as well. And then I use some of my favorite paper. This is the watercolor, the Cotty paper. And you can see I haven't put anything in this book yet. I'm a little afraid to do that. Um, but hopefully I will add some things to it in Fodder School 4. And then the last part of this book that we learned how to do was just putting it all together with the stitching. And she really made it so easy in her lessons to put together. And I just love how this turned out. The next project that I completed was the January project. So this is the project from Megan Quinlan, and she had us um, make an affirmation card deck. So I have a ton of her stencils. I love her style, and I haven't really used a lot of them. So this was a great opportunity for me to take all of her stencils out. And we started this project by making some background papers, which I did. Um, and then we added different kinds of things. We used stenciling. We added some different marks, which I tried to do and I don't do often enough. And then we also added some shading. She did hers with paint, but I used some distressed watercolor pencils. So you can see like I've added shading to some of my images here, and it really makes them pop. And I love how this deck came out. I also did the back papers. I did the same paper for all of them. So I used another one of her stencils. I just did a wash of this neon pink paint on deli paper and then just removed some of it with a baby wipe. So it made this kind of fun, like textury background. So all of my cards have the same type of background, which is really cool and it really pops. And it's just a fun set of cards to keep in your studio. I have some other decks that I've purchased, so I keep them all in a basket. So this one will go in there as well. The next month that I created was the project from Chris Karpiak, and there were a few different techniques that I really loved in this project. And we put them all together at the end and layered all the elements to make this really fun piece. So, one of her first lessons was about eco dyeing fabric with different natural materials. I didn't do that. I did have some fabric dye left over from a different session of Fodder School, and it's been sitting in my studio, so I wanted to use that. So I just used that to dye, and you can see it's a lot of bright colors. Dye a bunch of fabrics that I had in my stash. So a bunch of fabric scraps, some of these like cottony ribbons, And then the other thing that we did in the April lesson, which was really fun, I don't think I've ever done this before, is to work with some air dried clay and make these kind of different focal pieces. And I've painted mine, and you can see I've stamped into them with some different Tim Holtz wildflower stamps. Other elements that we also did was incorporate some natural elements like the stick and some twine. We made some different papers. You can see here I have these different layered altered tissue paper. And then what Chris showed us to do is to basically take an old book, like an old book from thrift store, and kind of prepare it to make a cool substrate to put all of our pieces on. So I really like how this project came out. I added some other elements, some metal elements. She did some grungy metal elements in her lesson. I just used some Tim Holtz ideology, some of these pieces of like old cello tape, and added some splattering. But I really like this piece, and I might put it on a frame and display it in my studio. The next project was definitely one of my favorites. So this is the June lesson from Sarah Gardner. I love her style. I love her techniques. And one of my favorite things about this lesson, we made all kinds of little fodder. As you can see, there's different mark making fodder. There's some pastel fodder. We used some found objects to make fodder. We made some fodder with magazine clippings. But one of the things she incorporated in this lesson, which I loved, was to incorporate some photos. So in some of my cards, there's just little tiny photos that are in there, and those are from my last trip to Costa Rica. So it was really fun and joyful to make these cards and remember the trip. The other great part about this is we did an ATC swap. So I swapped about 25 of my ATCs, and I kept these for myself, but I sent out little packets, like little file folders and some little bits of fodder to people in a swap. And it was great because I sent some all over the country. Some I sent internationally. And it was great to get so many other little packs of fodder and stickers and just other fun elements from people all over the world. And it really just was a chance to share some art, which I loved. So that is the ATCs. The next project that I did was the August project from Alison. And this project was to make some little tiny, she called them, I think, very berry houses. And they had berries on them and very similar to this, like some painty backgrounds. So I did my backgrounds for the houses with distress ink and made them kind of watercolory backgrounds. And then for the elements, I didn't draw them myself. She did do a lesson on sketching berries and some other elements, but I used some stamps from the Tim Holtz Media Marks stamp set and just some different ideology stickers. And you can see I also incorporated a stamp on each one. So kind of making them in a similar fashion. I did use the die for these two houses. And then for this one, I used just the formula that Alison showed us to make a house that's a little more wonky. So that's kind of just adds a little more interest. It's not perfectly symmetrical. And you can see I also added this little bits, like in my other project, of this cello tape, which I love, just on each house. So they're kind of cohesive. The other fun thing about this was I made so many papers when I made these houses that I have these beautiful papers that I can use on cards or just art journals or some other projects. But I really had fun with this. I love making these papers, and I've made these houses before, obviously, with the Tim Holtz dies, but these were just really fun to make. And I definitely explored some like more pastel colors, which was fun for me. And I can't wait to like just stuff these up on the shelf in my studio. For the last project that I created, these are the stamps that I carved for Yetunde Rodriguez's September project. The first part of our lesson was to carve different stamps, and I've tried stamp carving in the past, and I guess I just wasn't like spending the time or having enough patience for it. But once I got started on this lesson, I really started to enjoy just the process of carving the stamps. So I carved quite a few, and I used just a couple of them, and I'll show you how I use them for the final project. Um, One of the other things that I did was recently start taking some sewing lessons. So I made the first two bags. This one I used the face stamp that I made and just the fabric stamping, which was really fun. It took a little while to get, the fabric stamping down, but I think it turned out pretty well. And just a little simple stitching, and then a perfect little holder for pencils. In the Fodder School class, these were designed for like pot holders or plant pot covers. And I'm not really good with plants, so I just made mine for things within my studio. The second one that I created was just using this kind of round, kind of squarey round stamp. And I just made a pattern, just lining it up together. A similar thing, just something to store paintbrushes. And then for the very last one, I wanted to do something that had a lining that could kind of stand up on its own. And I just did a very simple pattern here with some box corners and added a lining to the inside. So that was something I was learning to do in sewing class. And I had to pull it apart once, but it finally made it together. And this one stands up on its own, which I really like. And it's just fun to have something in your home. This will be great for like makeup brushes or something maybe in the bathroom to hold. But it's just nice that to have something with your own marks on it. And I think these would be really cute for gifts as well. I hope you enjoyed this little peek at some of the projects that I made in Fodder School 3. I can't wait for the Fodder School Challenge that's going to be starting up soon, and also for all of the teachers in Fodder School 4. And I look forward to sharing those projects with you too. Thanks so much for watching.